Hey guys, this is Solomon. As you know, I've been doing a couple of videos here and there about some of the things that I think are critical for everybody, for IT organizations. My videos varied from API management to Docker to starting kind of a new series of videos around um, what the application server of the future um, should look like, and what are the options available within IBM that address these kind of concerns. So before I start, so me looking around and talking to many customers in understanding kind of environments, the areas that I think are very, very critical for organizations, development, operations alike, is many, and I'm going to address them in this page here. So number one is freedom of choice, and that when it comes to your developers, what frameworks do I need to run? Um, um, what operating system obviously I need to run on, and this is something that sometimes becomes an issue for you, for particularly when it comes to frameworks, and that's for the simple reason that what framework, any framework that works great today may not work great in the future, and therefore you given creating an environment or an application server that gives you the ability to run different frameworks, I think would be very, very beneficial. So keep that in mind. Dynamic scalability and performance. Obviously, to have a performant application server is critical. The more this allow you to run more for less from a hardware perspective. This also allow you to um, um, take advantage of more customers that come to your website and therefore be able to address them. So allow you to scale very well. Scalability is very critical as well. And most importantly is customer satisfaction. Having a slow application server, and the word slow doesn't necessarily mean something that will take hours to run. People get used to the smart devices where doing business. I click and I get the results back. I can't tell you how often I get very annoyed by the simple fact that when I go in to check in my flight, and it will just wait too long before the window comes back out and I've already checked in. And I question why this is happening in this day and age. And if there is an option available to me elsewhere, believe me, I will take it. So those airlines obviously are understanding that some of these feedback do come from their customers. Um, so what becomes very critical for you is that the people who use more and more of these devices are kind of the next generation that's coming up. So what you think is working today for you, it's definitely 100% not going to work very well for you in the immediate future when those elementary school kids and middle school kids are going to grow to actually be the ones who are taking advantage and using your um, um, website or your application, your app, or what have you, or your service. So resiliency and high availability, this is also very critical. Obviously, you are not going to be making money if your website is not up and running. So keep that in mind whenever you're thinking about what I need to do. The last thing you want is for somebody to come to your website and to purchase something from your website if you are a retail store, for example, and have that website not be up and running. The story will come back to you, may be okay once in your lifetime, but not okay for you to be having on a regular basis. So keep that in mind is something that will give you that resiliency and high availability is very, very critical. And obviously, running into problems in pre-prod environments, even in production environments, is something that will happen. And what you need to do is A, how do I address it such that I don't cause my end user to suffer? But secondly is, well, how do I deal with it such that I'm able to quickly address the problem, understand what it is, and fix it? As you know, understanding the problem is very much the fourth of finding a solution. So having an application server that gives you the ability to address your issues very, very quickly is a major, um, um, is a must-have for any environment. Having a slim fit server and something that can be as small as you want it to be based on your needs and can be as big as you want to, but also something that not only at a runtime you can configure to what you want to run, but something that you can say from a disk space perspective, from an application server on disk, I'm going to make it small, but also allow you to grow that application server based on your need. Um, Somebody could tell you that, well, you only need JSPs and servlets, for example, today, and that's great. But what happens if you need JPA and JDBC, right? Well, wouldn't it be cool if you're able to just add these features really quickly and add them in a way that, for the most part, does not allow you to even restart the application server? such that if another application comes in that needs to be installed into the app server, which that app requires, let's say JMS, that you can say, I'm just going to go and install the JMS feature, activate it, do all that dynamically, install your application, start your application, and run without the need to restart the app server, which may happen to include other applications, for example. And that obviously means that you're feeding into that resiliency item and the ability to add more servers or more applications to stack them. This will be a critical item when you're running in the cloud, but this is something that you're also going to continue to see the need for more and more as we go further. And of course, it goes without saying, security. If you're not concerned about security, if you're not concerned about running an application server, that security is number one concern on the producer of the application server, I think you're honestly kind of putting your head in the sand. We constantly hear it almost on a weekly basis with one company or even a government agency where something got messed up, where data got exposed. And at the end of the day, this is you, not just as the owner of the application server and the decision maker in the organization, but you as the consumer that's going to be suffering. And the last thing you want is to have your customers get upset by it. Just do the math, look it up, find out what it will cost you if you do have the security exposure from loss of sales to your organization and also from just loss of confidence of those people in your organization that they will end up leaving you. What I will do today, and this will be one of many videos where I will address each one of these bubbles here independently in a quick video. But today what I'm going to focus on is the requirement for an application server to be slim, fit, and be able to grow on demand as needed. Before I start with this, I'm gonna what I'm gonna be offering you here is the Liberty application server, and this is the web application server Liberty profile, and this is the one that's gonna give you the items that I described before. This is what IBM been working on for a long time to address these concerns. And let's go one by one to tell you what this application server is all about before I start a quick demo where I will show you what I was talking about, making your application server fit. That application server that we're talking about has to be composable. If I'm going to be able to slim it down and grow it, it has to be composable where I can take pieces of the app server and use exactly what I want to allow me to do it at a runtime, to start what features I want, and also to undisk when I actually create the actual installer of that application server to make it slim and small. Something that has to start very quickly and use very little memory. And this is exactly what you get with the Liberty with the website application server Liberty profile. It's under 60 megabyte of RAM and starts up under 3 seconds. And of course, that's because it starts only what you need. It's dynamic. It has a dynamic feature, and it's actually dynamic in nature from a runtime and configuration perspective. That means you can add more features, and you can change the configuration, and that's all that you need for these configurations to go in effect. There is no reason to restart the application server. Gives you the ability to unzip, install it, and deploy it, meaning that if you do not want to go through an install mechanism with an install manager, you could just literally zip up that environment or package it. And this is part of what I'm going to demo for you in this session, how to actually package it in a way that you only take in what you want. And of course, be cloud ready, and this is very, very critical because this is where things are going. If you're not on the cloud today, believe me, you will be real soon. The cloud doesn't necessarily mean being in a public cloud somewhere else. The cloud also means that within your organization, you allocate some resources and some people to have them be the cloud provider for you, such that somebody is maintaining it. And I will have another session later on about what cloud means from an IaaS and PaaS and so on and so forth. And of course, the ability for you, and this is what Liberty offers you, the ability for you to install new features as they become available, such that you don't necessarily have to go in and wait until the next upgrade of your organization. You could just simply add these features as a developer or as an admin to add the features after you reduce the number of features that you have. Take, for example, and this is what I'm going to demo today, is let's say JMS. JMS is something that you do not even have in your environment today. It's not even installed as part of the application server, but it does become available. you can just literally just point to it, install it, and run it. So with that in mind, let me just go ahead and start quickly by I'm going to look into my Eclipse environment here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I can take an application server. In this case, I already have an application server created. Just to show you quickly, it's just you can do new server, and you'll see there's a Liberty profile application server that you can create. Now, in this particular case, if you look at the server configuration, you will see that my configuration consists today of only JS feeds. I can go to the Design tab, and you can see under Feature Manager, I can add more features into my environment as I want to, whether it's going to be CDI, whether it's going to be batch, or EGB, or what have you. Okay. Now, let's say that I want to add for my environment JMS, and as you can see, well, JMS, I don't have the JMS feature into my environment, and I want JMS 2.0. Even though, by the way, I'm showing you this from within Eclipse, and the reason I'm doing this because it visually looks better. You can do this also from a command line, because that's what the operations team or admins will care more about. Eclipse typically tends to be for developers. So I'm going to show you both, actually. So in this particular case, if you come in here, and as you can see, in fact, let me start by showing you how I can do this from the command line, where I can go in. Here's a command line. Here's, by the way, how a Liberty application server looks like on disk. If I go into my computer and I go into here's the Liberty 855, which is my installation. This is how Liberty looks like. There's a bin directory that contains the commands that you want to run, and a user directory that contains your servers. And you can see here's my server, default server that I'm going to be installing and running. So let's go back, and now I started command line, and I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to say, well, I'm looking for JMS. So I go into the feature manager. I can say find JMS, and I just type the word JMS. Now notice that when I did this, I never specified where the repository exists. All I did was literally just say find me JMS. It would connect to the IBM repository, and it's going to come back and it's going to say, well, I found JMS 2.0, I found JMS 1.1, and other things that are related to JMS. Okay. Now, this one is installing it and looking at it from an IBM repository. I know that all organizations, or many, will be behind a firewall and therefore cannot access the repository. You can actually do the same thing locally, just like I did with a search. We'll give you that mechanism. And also, if you want to just simply download these features and put them into a local directory and point to it, that's also available to you. So you can either host an application or your own repository, I should say, or you can download the features, and the feature manager command itself will allow you to install from it. So now that I found this, okay, I'm going to copy, of course, the actual name, which is JMS 2.0, and then I'm going to say feature manager install JMS 2.0, and that will go ahead and install it. Now, what I'm going to do for you today is, obviously this is connecting here to the server, trying to find it. It's going to come back and it's going to tell you, do you agree with the license terms and agreement of what we're trying to do? And of course, the answer is going to be yes, I do agree. And it's going to go ahead and download and install the server. This will take a few minutes. And as it's downloaded, I'm working from home and I don't have a fast connection here. I'm actually using my hotspot on my computer. Okay. So as you can see in here that I installed the server successfully. This is right now, by the way, these features are beta. I'm at the beta release. It's May 29, 2015 today. There is, as you can see, there's a validation that happens, an error. This is just simply, you can ignore it for now. This is going to be addressed, but this should not affect me in terms of being able to install the feature and run with it. Now, as you can see in here, now I have the feature that I could select it. One other option for me to do is if I am doing it as a developer. So I showed you the option to do it as an admin. As a developer, if I want to do it from within the command line, I go to my application server and I can say show in Runtime Explorer. I get to the app server, I right click and I do add-ons. And if I install JMS, you will see that JMS is at 2.0. Of course, it's here, okay? And this is the ability for me to allow me to install JMS 2.0 client, as you can see in here, and I can install it. And this is really all that I need to do. I click install, and once I click install on it, of course, I click next, and that will allow it to be installed onto the system. And from that point on, I'll be able to select the JMS as a feature and run with it. So hopefully this shows you how I'm able to, and I'm just going to cancel this one out because I already had it installed, and how I'm able to configure my servers and add more to my list of features that are not even there. That means today I can be running where a new feature comes in, becomes available from IBM into the repository. We do have continuous delivery model. That means we're going to continue to populate these repositories once a quarter at the I guess at a minimum, and therefore if a new feature becomes available, you can install it and use it. So let me give you another example of, now this is how I can add more features onto my existing application server. So let's say in this case I have JSPs that are installed, and also I would like to install EJB 3.2, for example. Okay, and as I'm installing both of them, if I go back to the feature list, you will see that I have JSP 2.2 and EJB 3.2 that is installed. I can of course save it. And one thing I want to point to you is that once I look at the actual feature I'm installing JSP, notice that because these are the OSDI bundles, it will tell you that this feature enables Servlet 3.0. Now, the greatness that comes out of this is just because I know the features I'm installing and I know what features they depend on, we are able to shrink down the install image of the application server from being whatever size that it is to exactly what I want. I can do this from within Eclipse by right-clicking in here. Let me go back to the servers. Right-click, go into package, into utilities, package server, and I could actually come in and say I want to package it into servers. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, and the options I have is the full runtime, everything that exists in the application server, or no runtime, which basically only went to my application server files, user directory. As you can see when I showed you this, there is under the installation, there's a user directory that contains only my servers and my application server related environment. Or I can do the minify option. And this is a very powerful option because it will allow me to pick and choose only what I want. Meaning if I'm only using JSPs and servlets and EJBs, it's going to build me a runtime that's going to be a small subset that only address this and only allows me to run these particular features. Now, why this is critical? This is super critical for the simple fact that a lot of times, and you can look at it, for example, just give an example of other application servers where from server V1 to server V2, there's a continuous enhancement where more and more features added, but the more features you add, the more bloated that application server becomes. And if you're looking into 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, and we're talking about how the cloud works, right? Can you imagine running in the cloud today where you have to transfer your zip file or your application server over from point A to point B, where the application server is only 60 megabytes in size, and 10 years down the road or 7 years down the road, more features get added into the app server, and that goes from being 60 megabyte into being, let's say, 300 megabyte in size. The last thing you want is to say, I am dependent on the size of the application server, because that's going to limit your ability. You can't continuously assume you need a faster application server faster transport before you are able to move to the next level. With this feature, you are guaranteed that your application server between now until eternity is going to only increase once you run the minify option by whatever increase we do to an individual bundle. And since each individual bundle will never increase in terms of new features, because any new feature will be in its own new bundle, the only increase you're going to see is bug fixes, and those will be very, very small. So maybe a 60 megabyte app server in 10 years' time might increase to maybe 63, 64, and that is it. And this is very, very powerful feature. The same thing can apply, by the way, just to go back from the command line, is that I could go to the command line and I can say server, and as you can see, let me just do the server help command here. It's the server package. If you look into the package option, so you can do server package, and you can do the server name that you're having, and from that server name that you have, let me show you in here, So it'll be server package or server name, and you include the minus minus include equals minify. And of course, if you want to archive it into a specific zip file, you can say the minus minus archive with the location to what that zip file or jar file is going to exist. And that is all that you need to minify the application server. So I hope this makes sense to you. This is exactly what you want to address the concern that I talked about with having an application server that's going to increase based on demand, but also decrease to make sure that you don't have more that you want, both from a runtime perspective, but also from an on-disk perspective. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. This is Solomon, and this will be one of many videos that I can mention that I will try to address every one of those bubbles in here, of course, before I take on to the next topic.